Welcome back. We are WEBD6201 in the winter 2022 semester at Durham College, and it's week 2, part 2 of our recording and broadcast. And I've put the link for the lecture recording up on your particular course shell, and I'm going to carry that forward into the other ones as well for today. Just to do a review of what we did so far this week, we've made use of Bootstrap. We've created a nav bar when we needed to do that because we had no content. And we talked about progressive enhancement last week and how we can't really use JavaScript without some content. So we did some content on the Wednesday. And then we did a very simple event handler that basically had a hero button. When you click your hero button, it goes to the About page. And in this one, we're going to do a couple things. One of them is, let's put this thing live as an example on GitHub Pages. Notice that the live deployment on GitHub Pages is slated for next week. I'm putting it on this week for a couple reasons. One, I found that last iteration, that when I did it this close to your lab, people had a ton of questions and they ran into a lot of problems. And if we have those questions and problems now, great, because then I'll have an extra week to deal with them, right? But if I do it here, sorry?
Can you full screen this? It's a bit hard to see because Zoom takes out the block.
I'm as full screen as I'm going to be. I don't think there's, I mean, I can just, I'm not going to do the presentation today anyway. I'm just going to, I can zoom in if you like. How's that?
Yeah, that would help.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
So yeah, so what we did was, again, we talked about this idea of document object model last week, and we talked a little bit about how we can do some manipulation. We're going to be doing that today. And one of the challenges with, like I said, putting a site up live for us is there's issues. And there's more issues this semester because I've got you all to put things in one containing folder, a master folder or main folder, and that provides us a few more issues than before. So we're going to be talking about that first. And we're doing a little bit more DOM manipulation today, and that's it. The lab report for this week is already populated, so you should have everything you need to get going for the in-class exercise 2. And next week, just as a reminder for those people that are watching on YouTube, that there is a test 1 that will be released on Monday. I'm going to release it. It's going to be true, false, multiple choice questions. You'll have 2 attempts. For those people who have accommodations, it'll be slightly different. And you'll have the entire week to get it done. So from the Monday until this Friday, I think it is, of next week, you'll have the entire week to do the quiz. The quiz is, in my opinion, fairly straightforward. And it's based on all the stuff that we've talked about and the topics we've discussed in class, as well as general topics about JavaScript and things that you can look up. It's open book, open internet. And the time limit is pretty wide. I'm not going to kind of zone you in to like 10 minutes or something like that. You'll have quite a bit of time. If there's 10 questions, you'll probably have like 20 or 30 minutes. So lots of time to get it done. There's no calculations or math. So it should be fairly straightforward to be good from that perspective. That's coming up on the horizon starting next week. So let's continue. And I want to talk about a technology we're going to use for this in-class exercise, and it's called GitHub Pages. So let's get up there and talk about it. So GitHub Pages is how we're going to host live. I'm going to post that link both in the course shell later on today. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy it into your chat, and I'm also going to copy it up on YouTube for those people who are watching live. So those for that. So this is kind of a technology that GitHub offers, and it's free. And of course, GitHub is owned by Microsoft, so it's pretty cool. It allows you to create very simple pages for your organization as well as for your projects, which is pretty cool. So that's what we're going to be using. And it's, like I said, the great thing about it is it's the free thing that I like. So if you're going to use it for your organization or for your user, then the way it works is this. You're going to have your username, whatever your username is for GitHub.github.io, and you're going to create a new local folder with this name, exactly this name, okay? I recommend it anyway. You don't have to make it. You can call it remote folder or whatever. But the remote repository must be created with this name. Okay, so username, whatever the username is, .github.io. For me, it would be, Tsiopoulos.github.io, right, as an example. When you do this, this repository is going to be public. Yep, go ahead.
So like I'm looking at my repositories on the left here. So it's like Zoe Olive Straw / and then my other repositories. So my name would be whatever's to the left of that /.
Zoe Olive Straw.github.io. That's what you're going to call it. Okay. So don't do it yet. I'm going to talk about it because I want you guys to just watch for a bit because I want to talk about some obstacles to make this work properly. And first, the way I'm going to talk about it is let's start with what we have. We're going to get there. You can also, by the way, create projects. So you can make one user organization site and you can have unlimited projects. And like it says, unlimited projects means you can target the project and the project can be either inside of like a theme. So you can make it so that it's a simple theme. Notice that in GitHub Pages, you can select where the source is, but you can actually make it so it's very WordPress-like. That's not what we're interested in this course. And this can cause a bit of an issue for us because it uses something called Jekyll, which serves up files. It's like a little server on the back end. We need to turn Jekyll off, and Jekyll is spelt like you think it is. So Jekyll, something like that, maybe. And we need to turn that off, and I'm going to show you that we need to include something called a no Jekyll file. So .no Jekyll inside of our pages going forward. Okay, that's how we need to do it. If we don't use that, then what will end up happening is your node modules folder will not function. And without that functionality, you'll have no CSS, you'll have no font awesome, none of that will happen. Alternatively, we can use something called the Content Delivery Network. So if you go CDN.js, if you look that up, the Content Delivery Network allows you to, it delivers on the web any library that we have today. So for example, if I say something like Bootstrap, you can see as I start typing, it's instantly coming up, and there's Bootstrap 5.13, and it'll give you all the links instead of hard coding it and aligning it to node modules, like how we've been doing it so far. Cloudflare allows us to use a minified version of JavaScript for Bootstrap to enable Bootstrap, as well as the minified CSS files, which is what we've been using. Right now, this is for 4.61. You can decide which version of Bootstrap you want to use, which is really cool. It also supports things like Font Awesome. So there's your Font Awesome library, right? Up to 5.15, which is what we've been using. And that's way down here. So you can certainly do this, okay? The challenge with doing this is we have to change every single page right now. What if we have 20 more pages coming up? We'd have to change them all. It's a one-time change. It's kind of a front end. And this is great to use. Content Delivery Network is an amazing thing to use when you deploy live for your customer, okay? And for now, we're developers and we're developing stuff. So that's why I'm doing it locally for you. It's good to know where it's coming from. And later on, we use Node.js in the second half of the course. We're going to also be using node modules then, and a different cloud-based service that we're going to be hitting later on. So for now, yes, we could use the Content Delivery Network and not use Node.js, which is node modules, but I'm going to stay with what we have, which means we have to use that no Jekyll thing in a bit. Okay, so just letting you know, this is an alternative to using node modules. Okay, so that's this. I'll come back to this. So some problems. One thing we've set up in the past, and I've talked about the containing folder thing for your in-class exercises. So this is kind of an administrative as well as a technical issue. I've said to you guys, I want you guys to have a, an in-class exercise kind of master library or main repo, if you will. And this is what we have here. We have our a git.git folder on the outside, and we have in-class exercise 1 and 2 on the inside. And that would work well if this folder for like projects, if this folder were public, but it's not public. You guys are serving up private folders, and that kind of, creates a problem, right? So let me show you what that looks like. So if I take that containing folder, this is where I want you to watch for a second, just for a bit, and I dump it in here, right? You're going to see that I have in-class exercise 1 and 2. Yay, that's great, right? And the way it would work is that containing folder online. So let's go online for a second, github.com, and you go to Durham, and you're going to see that the containing folder for you guys is this one, right? So the way I would make this public, and I want to deploy public, is, well, here's the containing folders. I'm going to go to settings. This is the process that you would use if you were going to make a project-based, kind of website using GitHub Pages, right? Project-based, not user-based. So if I go down to Pages in settings, you can see that this is there. You see that there is a source, and I can specify that I want to use the main branch. And that's nice. Everything's great. And, well, it says, even when I select source and everything else, says that my GitHub Pages is disabled. Select the source below to GitHub Pages, blah, blah, blah. And usually what you can do is you can select the page that I want, like main, for whatever reason. I'm not sure why it's giving me this error. Maybe it's because I already have one. There it is. I just need to refresh. And normally what it would do is show me this. So main and then root, or you can choose a docs folder, right? So if we had everything public, then I can choose a docs folder and save. You guys can't do this. This requires you to pay for GitHub, and exactly, Zoe. It requires you to upgrade your GitHub account in order to use Pages because you guys are private. So that's why you can't do it. And that sucks. To be honest with you, it'd be really great if you can do it with privately, but that's just a feature that they reserve for pay. The professional version or whatever you want to call it. I mean, they have to make money somehow, I guess. Otherwise, it's all free, right? So far, and unlimited, spacing and a bunch of other stuff that they offer us. So I think it's reasonable what they're asking. But anyway, so this is what you would normally do. And so I'm going to show you the process if this was live. So what I would do locally is I would create a folder called docs inside of my section 1. So it's kind of going here and go new folder. We would call it docs, right? And the docs folder, by the way, you can, if you were doing something with like C++ and you had a C++ project, and you wanted to have a small website to demonstrate some things from it, as an example. Yeah, public repository can be done for sure, Zoe, you're right. Then what I would do is take some pages like this, and of course we're missing the .jekyll file. Let's add that in. To make a .jekyll file, we're going to need that today. You're going to right-click. This is for you to do, by the way. You're going to go new, and you're going to go text document, just like we've done before for other text type documents. And notice it just says new text document.txt. You're just going to wipe this out, and you're just going to type in .no Jekyll and press enter. It's going to ask you, are you sure? I'm going to say yes. That's definitely what I want to say. And if you can't see this or you can't do this, it's because in the view menu, a lot of times you haven't unchecked the hidden items, or you have this unchecked, I mean, and your file name extensions are also unchecked. If you have these two unchecked, please make sure they're checked so that you can see the .no Jekyll file. Okay, so that's what you need in order.
We're making this as what?
A text document.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just got to kind of go new.
No Jekyll.
Yeah, and just rename it to whatever you want, right? Rename it to .no Jekyll. So no Jekyll is an indicator for GitHub that you want them to turn off Jekyll, which is the server that they use for a web WordPress-like experience, which we don't need, right? Because we're going to be using node modules, and node modules are going to be things that we're going to use, and later on we're going to probably serve up Node.js. We can't do it. That's one thing we can't do. We can't create a Node.js server up on GitHub Pages. We're going to use something else. But for now, until the second half of the semester, we're going to be using GitHub Pages all the time. All right, so this is the first thing. So that I would take these things, I would kind of copy everything. Again, this is now for you to watch. We've already created a node Jekyll file. You're going to use this later. And then we're going to go back up to section 1, and inside of my docs folder, paste it in, right? And I'm pasting everything, node modules, the whole thing. Yes, you're right, Tyler. No, extensions have to be on and all that stuff. Otherwise, it won't allow you to. So once you've done that and you have copied this into my docs folder, now I can put this up on GitHub, right? Let's put my new version, which has in-class exercise 1 and 2. Don't do this, guys, because it's not going to be useful for you. I'm just going to show you ICE1, ICE2, and docs, and a hidden .git folder. Okay, so what I want to do then is go back to VS Code, and you can see that I have my docs folder, right? And then what I can do is I can just go something like a git add dot, and there's my docs folder, git commit -m, and I'll say added docs folder, and then git push, and it'll push my docs folder up online, right? And that's great, but it doesn't help you any. And so when I go back to here, you can see now that I have my docs folder just like this. So again, this is for future use. If you have a project that's public, in the public domain, you have something that's open source and you want to have a folder for your websites, you put it in your docs folder. And then what you want to do is in settings, like I said, you go down to your pages and you select main, you select docs, and then click save. Now, I'm showing you this because the process for what we're going to do with the other way is going to be the exact same way. And let me go back to code now. And you're going to see down here, there's no deployments yet. You got to wait. And let me explain this. So what GitHub is doing now is it's actually creating a workspace and a small virtual machine in order for it to launch your website. So if I refresh, you can see now on the bottom, there is environments and it says queued. Queued means it's going to wait. We're waiting for it to be created. All I want you to do is just watch Zoe for now. And then I'll show you, because you can't do this right now because your site is private anyway. So just watch and then I'll show you. And if I refresh again, you're going to see it's active suddenly, because it takes time to do the build, and it goes from pending, from queued to pending to in progress to active. It has different stages, right? If I go to my environments now, I'm going to see this area that says view deployment. And when I click view deployment, ta-da, I see everything that we had from last day. And if I copy this and I give it to you guys, put it in the link in our chat, you should be able to get there too. Try it. Okay, there's the...
Yeah.
So, right? And that's how we're going to share pages together. But, of course, this won't work for you because you can't do it because you don't have access to a docs folder, because you guys are private, and that's good, but it's bad because we need to do something different. And this is where the confusion comes into play. Okay, so now let's not do that. How do I turn it off? I'm going to go to settings, just like before. It's pretty simple. And I know you can intuit this, but just bear with me. And I'm just going to go from, in my pages, I'm going to go from main to none. And sometimes I got to refresh. Let's try that again. And save. There we go. And now it's been deleted. So if you try it again, it won't work. Okay. And sometimes it'll be cached. And if you try it again, it will work. But don't worry about it. So now that's good, but I really don't need the docs folder, so let's delete it. So going back to Visual Studio Code, I want to remove the docs folder, right? So let's look at that. What the hell is going on? Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so let's still remove the docs folder, right? So delete it. And yeah, move it to recycle bin, sure. And let's remove it. So git add dot, git commit -m, removed docs folder, and then git push. And now we removed the docs folder from online. And if I refresh, you can see that it's gone. Okay, so those were good. So how do I deal with it? Github Pages gives a solution. Back to what we did before, we need to use the organization or theme thing that we talked about before. So it needs to be your username.github.io. What I want you to do now is create a local folder. Now this is for you to do, please. All right. I want you to go and create a local folder called whatever the name is of your site, of your account, .github.io. And it should be empty, please, like so. Outside of everything. Outside of everything, outside, it should be just a separate thing altogether, please.
Gotcha.
Right? Because otherwise you'll screw yourself up. It won't work because it'll be private. It needs to be public, right? So, okay. So if I go here, you can see clearly that my site is durhamprogrammer.github.io because that is the name of my organization. Okay, that's step one. Step two, I'm going to go into my stuff for today, grab the files that we did before, just like when I did for docs, copy all this stuff. This is what you're going to do. You're going to take all your in-class exercise 2 stuff. So not the file, not the folder, but the containing stuff, the stuff that's inside the folder. Grab all of it, copy it, go to the name of your account.github.io folder, and then paste it in. Right? And then what you're going to do is set up a new repository locally and a new repository remotely and connect to it. Okay? Now follow the process. So the next thing is, now that I have this, I've copied my files from in-class exercise 2. I'm going to go to Durham Programmer. I'm going to bring up my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to drag and drop from durhamprogrammer.github.io. In your case, it'd be whatever your last name is or whatever your account name is, .github.io, into Visual Studio Code, right? And once that's done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this normal stuff, git init. I'm initializing a new repository in this folder. Git add dot. It's a separate project altogether, right? Git commit -m initial commit, and we're done locally. I'll put the commands again inside of the chat so you get them. Git init, git add dot, git commit -m initial commit. Sorry, so I don't want to type it wrong. Okay, and I'll put it inside of YouTube as well. Okay, so do that first, please. All right, so those are the commands. So now that you've done this and you've set it up locally, right, as an example, now we need to create a folder or a repository remotely on the server. So let's do that. So again, I'm going to go back to GitHub, and I'm going to go to Durham Programmer, and now let's set up my profile. Ready? It's going to be very similar for you. So new, and it says Durham Programmer, and we're going to use the same name. So Durham Programmer.github.io. So notice that it's the same first part as your account name. This is critical. Okay, if you make something funky in here, it won't work. Click public, please. Make sure it's public. That's also very important. If you click something else like private, it will not work, ever. That would be not good for you. Or next, create repository. Don't click anything else. Create repository. And you're going to get some steering instructions like we got last time. The only thing you need now, locally, excuse me, is grab these last 3 lines of code. So copy them and go to your terminal and right-click, and then press enter, and you're good. Once you've done this, and you don't have to share this with me because this is a public repository, I can get to it anytime I want. Once you've done this online, then you see this, okay? This is the repository. This is your live site. So from now on, we're going to call this your live site and your local repo. Your local repo is going to be your in-class exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it's going to be, right? So your live site, notice that there is no deployments yet, right? It takes time. Refresh. When you refresh, there's the local deployment. You can see that it's in progress, my friends, right? And then if I refresh again, right, we're seeing it's active. Let's test it and see if it works. So now you should see that this is my live site, and this is where I'm going to put my stuff in the future. So if I go put it in here, try this now. That should work for you guys. And I put it in your chat and see if it works for you. And it should. So now here's the challenge. And this is what I kind of did earlier. I'm going to cheer you on, guys. I want to see if you can do it. You go to it right here. So if I go back to your site, as an example, and I go back to whatever your site is called, your repo, on the right, there's environments. You're going to click on the environment, the top link. You're going to go view deployment. And once you click view deployment, it's going to take you to your site. Take that link and paste it in the chat, please. Do it now. Okay, Zoe, let's see if it worked for you, right? Go, Zoe. Awesome. Woohoo. All right, there we go. Let's see who else got it in there, all right? We got Cameron. You're awesome. And we have Jacob. Amazing. And let's see who else we got. We got Logan. You did it. You're incredible. And we have Samuel. Wow, you guys outdid everybody else, man. Way faster than everyone else so far. Maybe because I practiced a couple times. I can't blame them. I have to blame myself because, it's crazy. So guys, thank you so much for going through that exercise. I know I cheered you on there, but the thing is, this is exciting because now you have your deployment zone, right? So this is pretty cool. What I want you guys to do is continue to practice. Is there anyone, let's check now for confirmation. Is there anyone here who couldn't make this work for whatever reason? That's also possible, right? So don't be upset about it or whatever. There could be a number of steps that are missing for you not to make this work, right? So anybody, if you can't make this work, X on your reactions, please, in the participant panel. Tyler's still working on it, no problem. Anyone else? And if you get it working later on today, just pop it into your chat and I'll give you a cheer and put it up there, okay? And here's why I'm doing it, because guys, this is a huge step, right? Dakota's still working on it, cool. Because if you can get this going, then it's going to go far to doing things a couple of ways. One, your lab one with you and your partner is going to work well, right? Because you already have the live site piece. All you have to do is put it in there. And you know about the node Jekyll thing, which is going to go huge for the first half of semester because we're going to need to use your node modules and everything else. This is great. And we're sitting at week 2, and you've got, I know it does take a long time. And so let's talk about issues. And Tyler just mentioned it. Node modules is big, right? So we'll talk about issues and what we can do to make it better and why is it bad in many ways, okay? It's bad in a lot of ways. So we have a live site. This live site locally is separate and has nothing to do with your section, your in-class exercises. And what I mean nothing to do is there's no synchronization between the two. Zero. That means if you make a mistake, if you forget to copy something or anything like that, there will be a difference. I see Kellen. Kellen, woo! Awesome. Got to do that every single time. Zoe says, so we can use the project instructions if we want to set up additional websites to practice, right? Absolutely. As long as you make them public. Yeah. And the great thing about this is, you have this up, but the bad thing is that they're not in sync. So again, your Durham programmer, your live site, and your in-class exercise, this is a negative. It's a con of this whole system, the way we set it up today, because I want to work in here. I want to do my work, and this is my local repository and everything else. This is where I do my development, but my development and my live site are decoupled, if you will. All right. And that's not normally how I work. How I normally work is I have a private repository and I also have some kind of custom domain name. Okay. Let's say I get something from GoDaddy or register.com or whatever. And if you go with GitHub Education, there is something called a GitHub Education pack. So GitHub Education. I want to share this with you. So the GitHub Education Pack allows you to set up as a student. The student pack is huge, guys. It's crazy huge, and you get a lot of stuff for free. All right, so here you sign up for your student pack. I'm just going to copy this into your chat so you can grab that, and I'll put it also in on YouTube for you guys. And the student education pack, I talk about it every year, and it just gets better and better. Okay, so here's the stuff that it includes. Free JetBrains stuff, all right, like before. We just talked about that. A free domain from Namecheap for 1 year with an SSL certificate. Huge, all right? Microsoft Azure, DigitalOcean. It also includes Bootstrap Studio. It includes GitHub Pages, as well as GitHub, with developer tools. And it also includes GitKraken, which is a very nice, and GitKraken Pro, with also Kanban boards, so pro boards, which are really good for agile project management, all that kind of stuff it includes. And it just gets more and more. MongoDB Atlas Online, $50 of MongoDB Atlas credits, which we're going to talk about later on this semester. And it just keeps going and going and going and going. Guys, please take advantage of this thing while you're a student. It's huge. It's crazy. It's awesome, right? And you need it because it's going to help you. Yep. You'll have access to it as long as you're a student. Right, so pretty cool. A lot of stuff lasts for a year. So if you start it now, it'll last probably until the time you're done. Okay, or a little after. Right, so really good stuff. And like I said, tons and tons of little developer tools and everything else. You can explore a lot of this stuff, and it's amazing what you get for free. And it also gives you a sense of what's being out there. All the stuff that's been offered here, a lot of it is are tools that people use in the industry. Tyler, let's see. Woohoo! Tyler, you're live. That's awesome. The one thing you're missing is your nav bar. But otherwise, you're live. You're awesome. Thank you. All right. So, okay. I'm sorry. It's my fault, Tyler. Okay. So there you go. So please, if you haven't had a chance to sign up for GitHub Education, it's pretty awesome. And I think you can't go wrong with the stuff that they offer. And if you do that, you get a bunch of stuff, and you should. Okay, so please do that right away. Let's go back to what we're doing. So we did that. So that is the disconnect. The disconnect is we're kind of putting up a live site, and our in-class exercise 2 is very different than or it could be very different at the end, or out of sync with our live site. And that can propose problems because if I miss something or if I don't copy something from this to the other one, then we're going to go, wait, it's not working. It's not working because in class exercise, the two things are disconnected, right? Okay. So let's continue with what we're doing here. So questions around your live site. That is one of the requirements for this week's in-class exercise 2, as well as your lab 1. Okay, and actually it'll be lab 1, 2, and 3, right? Yeah.
I have a question regarding if I have a public repository in GitHub,
They can just look at it, right? So that's why. Yeah.
So I still control who has the ability to push to it. So someone can't overwrite.
No, public. Yeah, public is only just if you want. And remember, I mean, it's live and it's public. So a way to hide it. So this is a way to hide it. I was going to say, how do you hide it? How do you make it better? So a way to do it is to buy a domain name. And so let's suppose I wanted to buy something like Durham Programmer. I'm going on GoDaddy.com, and it's just one. Or you can use the GitHub Student Pack and go to Namecheap. So I go to Durham. I want to look for, is Durham Programmer available? I want to buy that. So the durhamprogrammer.ca is $3 a year. Durhamprogrammer.com is $3 a year. And I'd probably go with the .com because .coms are just better, right? Everyone loves .coms. And you can see that there's a bunch of ones. So if you like, if there's a name that you like, you can subscribe to something like GoDaddy or Namecheap or whatever.
I'm assuming that the crossover price there is like the normal yearly rate.
It is.
The $3 is just like an initial discount.
It's a promotional rate.
For the first year with a 2-year registration.
Which is perfect. I'm fine with it, you know, because basically you got to pay. Yeah.
I wanted a personal website for like, you know, to put on resumes and stuff.
Yeah. It's awesome. And the thing is, so for $27 or $28 for 2 years, you have access. It's you own it. You own that name forever, right? As long as you keep paying. And I think it's amazing what you can do. So you can, Zoe, if you wanted to use GitHub Pages on the back end, and if you wanted to point your custom domain to your GitHub pages, no one will know where it's coming from. They won't have access to the actual code. They'll have access to just your custom domain. Yeah. But the thing is, you have to pay the private stuff. You'd have to pay for. Remember, because you can't have a private. Your private repository would be if you made it public, even if you pointed to, you know, it was like some kind of like project folder. As long as you know this thing is pointing to it, you're good to go. And so what I mean by that is correct.
So there's still some limit.
Correct. And that's why I think it's pretty good. So example for me, if I go to github.com and just by itself, right? And if I go to me, right? I have a bunch of stuff that's up here. So I have some repositories that are, most of them are public because I share it with everybody. It's okay. So if I look at my repositories, this is me. And then if I search for me, github.io, oops, I do have stuff there. There it is. And this was back in 2018. So if you actually search for it, there's also something called the CNAME. And the CNAME is I bought my lastname.com. Woohoo, right? Really, really incredible. But if you put that in there, right, then it'll take you to this, which is a little game that you can play, right? So that is something that you can do. Of course you have.
Was that a Game Maker tutorial or was that the Unity one?
No, I made it actually. I did it with TypeScript. I did it with TypeScript and JavaScript technologies. All right, so
sorry, never mind.
No problem. All right, so Dakota, woo! And we got Cody, yeah, right? Both of you guys did it. Awesome, thank you. All right, so and I'm doing that because I think it's awesome. I think you guys are great to be able to do that, and it's going to make it that much easier for you guys to do Lab 1 and in-class exercise 2. Okay, let's continue with the stuff we have to do today now. So, any questions about GitHub Pages? Hosting live, and any comments about the process, right?
Just one actually. So since we're doing ICE2 now, I assume we're going to be working in our ICE2 folder.
Yes.
And to make sure, for the actual lab report and everything, I assume we're just going to copy everything from our ICE2, put it into the website or
Correct.
Folder,
Yep.
the one that we made,
The live
and
folder.
then push that so that we have it on the live site.
Yes, that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where the disconnect is.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like it, but that's what we're going to do. And I don't like it because, it's not. I don't like it because of the workflow, right? I prefer that everything is constantly connected online. So for me, it's going to work because I'm public, right? Because I don't care. But for you guys, because you're private, and especially if you have sensitive information that's in there or whatever, that won't work for you. You have to use the other way, which is kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. I think it's still okay. All right, let's get into the next piece, which is we kind of talked about the DOM a little bit. And last day, what we did was, I'm just going to bring up Light Server here. So let's just do that. Okay, and sometimes it does that with Visual Studio Code. Hey, let's just kill all these things. And just try it again. Good. So if I bring up Light Server, it's going to bring this up. And I'm just going to kind of make it so it goes on the right. Yay. And on the left, we're going to have Visual Studio Code. Nice. And what I want to do here is show you what it does. So we have a little hero button and it takes us to our About page. And the way it does that is it hooks in. We talked about this. You need to make a reference to an element on the page in order for you to add an event listener, which is what we did. And I talked about you can use different event listeners to do that. You can use a mouse over, mouse out, kind of event listener. And you can also use a click event. And these event listeners that we talked about are the most common event listeners that we've seen so far. So he's asking, can we use JavaScript to avoid having duplicated HTML? Yes, we can. But we won't get to that until Ajax. When we hit Ajax, Zoe, we'll do it.
Also, just to clarify, we're doing
We're doing it in our ICE2 folder, yes. Yeah, because we can't do it in the other one yet, because I want you to think about your ICE2 folder and any ICE folder as your dev folder. We're developing here, and then your other folder, github.io, that one, that's going to be your deployment folder. So we have a development folder and a deployment folder. And there's two different zones, if you will. The development zone and the deployment zone. Yeah?
Do the GitHub site support PHP?
I do not think so. That's a back-end technology, so it wouldn't. No, it only supports front-end stuff, right? So for back-end, we're going to use something else. We're going to use Heroku. Okay, so that's the next step in the second half of semester is we're going to use Heroku. Heroku is another free-to-use, kind of structure, and it allows you to do Node.js, Ruby, Java, which is what you guys are doing for enterprise, PHP, Python, Go, and all this other stuff. It's really awesome, and it's a really nice cloud service that they allow us to use. We're also going to be using MongoDB Atlas for our database this second half of semester. So if you look that up, it's the MongoDB Atlas database, which is really awesome. Someone's at home. I don't know.
Someone is at the front door.
Isn't that bizarre? They always come when I'm teaching. It's crazy, right? But yeah, so that's how it is, which is really really awesome. And we're going to do all these things for free. So pretty cool stuff. But for the front end, we're going to be using GitHub Pages. All right, let's get into this thing. So this is fine. And what we've done so far is this, but I want to talk about injection techniques. I want to talk about how do I manipulate the DOM to add content, which is what our in-class exercise 2 is about this week, and also lab 1 largely is about. So one thing we did last time was we also filtered our code so that depending on which page we're on, the code will function or not. That's what we did last day, right? So notice here we have a switch case. In the switch case, we're switching on title, and depending on what the title is, if it's a home, then we're going to call the display home function, and this is where we're going to put the details in here. Okay. So just like that, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to talk about 4 main steps for DOM manipulation, whether it's insertion, deletion, modification, whatever you want. Step 1. Let's talk about this. That is, let's get a reference, right, to an entry point or points, right? And that can mean something like, which means it's like an insertion point or a deletion point. We need to do that first, okay? So we can't do it without a reference. And what I mean by a reference is we have our view, which is what we're seeing on the right. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller, right? So we see our view on the right, and on the left, we have our code. So the first thing we need to do is get a reference. And this, think about our JavaScript as our code behind file, if you will. Step 2. So what do we do after we make a reference? Then we need to create a element, HTML element in memory, all right? Because we're programmatically adding stuff. Okay, that's how it goes. And it could be an element, it could be a node, it could be parts of an element, but we need to create it in memory. Okay, step 3, we need to configure it. Right? And then finally, step 4, we can perform, right, the insertion, deletion, or whatever. And sometimes if we're just doing a deletion, we can skip this step, these 2 steps. We're not creating elements if we're going to delete something. But we do need to get a reference, all right? If we're doing an insertion, whether it's an insertion after or an insertion before, we definitely need to do these 2 steps because we're inserting something, okay? Okay, so I'm just looking at the chat again. It runs pre-check, checking the image, wants the data. I know, I'm so sorry, Tyler. I know, but once you get it, it's awesome. You just need to upload a picture of your student ID. Yes, you do. Okay, so let's continue. So step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So let's do step 1 together. So the first step is I want to get access to some place on the website where I can add a paragraph. So this is my goal. I want to add a paragraph and I want to add a paragraph in the same container as we have in our that's containing our welcome to our site and learn about us button. So that means that if I look at that, let's do an inspect. And if I look at the elements on our page, we can do that here too, inside the page, right? We can see that inside of the body tag, we have a div tag, right? And in the div tag, we have an h1 tag and a button. I think the div tag is probably not named properly. We might want to name this main. So let's do that first. So I'm going to go into my index.html, and I'm going to change the div tag from a div tag to a main tag. I think this is better for us for a number of reasons. One, main means it's the main element with the main content, so it's more semantically correct, right? I think this is the way to go. Let's save that. It's not going to change anything on our website, but what it will do is if I go here, you can see now that we have a main tag where our main content is. So this is where I want to make a connection, right? So in here, in the reference area, step 1, then, so he says, could I use this to pop in a nav bar on each page? Absolutely. So, but be careful, because the nav bar, you'd have to store it somewhere, and then programmatically making a nav bar might be challenging to maintain. Okay.
I guess the reason that I'm asking is so that, like, you know, if you have enough time you're changing as you develop the website, so that
Yeah. You're way ahead of me. You're way ahead of me, because at the end of the day, we're going to get there with Ajax. And when we do it Ajax, you're going to love it, because Ajax allows us to make one page once and deploy everywhere as a component, as opposed to the way we're doing it right now. So bear with me. We'll get through this part. And when we get to Ajax, you'll be happier. All right, so, because I'm not happy with this either, to be honest. I agree with you. All right, so step 1, get a reference to an entry point. Let's do that. So what we want to do is we want to get an entry point to this main component. So let's do that. So we're going to say let main content, right? We're going to name something, a variable to hold into it. And we're going to use the same idea. We're going to call the document, hey document, I want to get an element. I want to get elements by tag name. There is no ID that the main element has. It just has a class. So I want to hook into it by tag name. So get elements by tag name. Guys, when you see elements, anything with an S inside of it, it's pluralized. That means that we are getting a group of elements. And I want to get elements by tag name. I'm saying my main. That means I'm saying, let's get every main tag in the website. If you only have one, it doesn't matter. Let's console log that and see what we get. So if I go here and I put a console log in, and I press save, right? And then in the console, you're going to see that I get an HTML collection. So not just one, but an array of elements. But wait a minute, there's only one main, right? Yes, there is. But still, because we're using the get elements by tag name, we're getting an array. And we're getting an array of 1. It's like being in a group of 1. It's weird, right? And we have the 0th element, and the 0th element is what we really want to hook into. So here's the ugly way to do it. We're going to go here and press square brackets, and we're going to say, yes, let's get you now. And now if you notice, you're going to have access to the element, just like we had access to this element up here. Couple things to note. 1, that when I hover over this element, it says it's an HTML element. If I hover over this element, it says it's an HTML element. And that's very generic. It doesn't know that this is a button up here when I did get element by ID. And it doesn't know that main content is a main element. It doesn't know that. It just knows it's some HTML element. Later, we're going to identify this a little easier. But for now, this is where we start. So this is the first thing. So we hook into it, number 1. Once we've created a connection, now I need to create an element in memory. Remember I said I wanted to create a paragraph tag. So we can say that, let's call it main paragraph. My main paragraph is equal to, okay, what is it? I want to create an element, hey document. I want to create element, I want to create a paragraph element, a P tag, right, if you will. even if I press save now, it doesn't add anything. There's nothing that's physically here. And the reason for that is just because we created it in memory, we haven't done step 3 and 4. We haven't configured it or added it. If I add it now, let's just skip steps, and I add it, and I want to append it to the main content. That means I want to add it at the end. I can say something like, hey, main content, I want to append child my new paragraph. Okay, and if I did that and press save, again, no visible difference. But in the elements area, if I go to my body, then you can see that inside of my body tag, you'll see a main tag. And sure enough, there's this empty paragraph right here. That's what I did. I made an empty paragraph tag and I inserted it after everything else. Okay. Nice, nice, nice. But let's configure it now. So we make a paragraph tag, we're configuring it. And the way we do that is we say, hey, main paragraph, we're going to set attributes. And the way we're going to set it, first let's set the ID, and we're going to set the ID to main paragraph. Okay, and we'll save that and see what that looks like. So we made an attribute, main paragraph. Attributes, by the way, are anything that's inside of a tag, right? So for example, the class is also an attribute, right? Source, src is also an attribute. lang is also an attribute. Type is an attribute, and other things. There's many, many things that can be considered attributes. Async is an attribute. So when we look in here, if I go to my paragraph now, I see paragraph with an ID of main paragraph. Nice. Let's add some content. So that's also a configuration. So I'll say main paragraph. I want to change the text content. The text content is going to be equal to, this is the main paragraph. Really exciting stuff. Let's make an exclamation mark too, because it's so exciting. And once we do that, then it's there, main paragraph. But it would be really nice if we had a space. Let's take a look at what that looks like live. If we go in there, we go to main, you can see that inside of main, we see this, and that's nice. And it's actually been configured now programmatically. But it would be nice if we had a class, like a Bootstrap class. So we say main paragraph dot set attribute, and we can say class, and you can put any class you want in here, right? So for example, I want margin top, that's a class, and I want 3 spaces, and save. And now you can see that I can do that, and I have spacing in there. So that's your main paragraph. Okay, this is great. This is a good example of insertion after, right? So this is an append. Let's put this up on GitHub. So, and I'm not going to do the live site until I'm completely done. Okay, so just to let you know from a workflow perspective, because I think it's a lot of time. So again, I'm going to do git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say added append example, you know, for or we'll say DOM document object model append example. How about that? Just to let you know what that is. It's kind of a contrived example again, but what it does is it shows you how this will work. Okay. Questions so far? Are you guys with me? Check mark if you're with me, X if you don't understand or you can't make it work.
Yeah, this is super cool.
Right? Good. It should be super easy for you at this point, right? With the way we set things up. Now, it took some time to get here. This is the 4th lesson we've had together for us to get here, right? But the great thing is now you're seeing a structure emerge, right? This is the idea. And I think after this, it's going to ramp, guys. So be patient with me. Step 3, sure. Sorry about that, Tyler. Here it is. Be patient with me because it ramps, and I mean it. It really ramps. And I'm talking about like the learning curve can be steep at times because there's stuff that's in here that you're going to go, that's not intuitive. That doesn't make sense. Why is it like that? And you should be asking those questions. Like Zoe's asking, can we do something different? Because the navbar copy stuff is really terrible. I agree. One thing that I wanted to change in your website, because I've done this a couple of times, we've used the nav, header item. So in our header, in our body, sorry, Your version uses a nav with a container fluid. I wanted to change this because we did it differently in the other classes, and I think it works better when we don't have a nav with a container fluid. So let's do that in the index.html just as an update. So I'm going to go into my index.html here and change my nav with a class of container fluid to a header and remove container fluid, the class of container fluid, please. And what this will do, if you press save, it's going to expand my nav bar to go right to the edge, which I think is best. All right, so all I did was I just changed my nav with the container fluid that was containing everything else to a header. And let's make sure that there's no quotations on the header, which is really weird. That'd be really weird. Yeah, it's good. Make sense?
So the nav element that we have class equals container fluid, we just change that to header?
Yeah, please do that. This is for you guys only. The other groups I didn't do it because I realized it just was not good. I'm sure it bothered you. What was that?
Just already having headers. And when I did the first one, like on Wednesday, so I had to watch the video. So I already had the header picked ready. So I was like, yeah,
it's better.
Change.
Good. Yeah, because it is better. You guys don't have it, but now you do. All right. So now that we're good to go, we've done that part. Let's go back to our JavaScript and do the next piece. So we can insert after. This is an example of insert after. Let's do an insert before. All right. So what about, how do I do an insert before? So this is insert after. Well, to do an insert before, we still need to do step one. We need some place to insert it, right? We still need to add a new element, and we still need to configure it. But instead of append child, so this is, let's make a space here. So example of insert after or append, that's what that is, right? Let's comment that out. And instead of append child, let's do something different. Let's do an insert before. So example of insert before, right? It's quite simple. You go main contents, right? Dot before, seriously. And then you put in main paragraph. And then you can insert your main paragraph before your other stuff. But now when we do that, look what it did. It put it up there. Right? But if I go to my body, right, and I go into the main, you can see what's happened, right? I have my paragraph floating up here. It's literally before the main content container. For me to put it in here before my H1 tag and not at the bottom, I would have to get the insertion point to be right here. Okay? Now, there are ways to get the number of children and all that kind of stuff. For example, how do I manipulate it? And we'll talk about this next week. How do I enumerate the number of children, point to a child, as opposed to the way we're doing it right now, or use another thing like query selector. We use a query and we get to that as opposed to going to main with a get elements by tag name. And this is okay. This is basic, but there's better, more complex ways. So this is what this does. Now, what that means is that I probably want to, if I'm going to put it up here, then I'd have to configure it so it has some kind of margin on the left if I was going to put it up here. But I just wanted to show you that you can do that insert before stuff. Okay, so that's an example of insert before. How about a deletion, right? Because now we've done an insert before and insert after. Let's do the insert after again. So it's back down to here. And I want to delete the button. I want to delete the button. How do I do that? So let's do that. So we'll say example of deletion. So I want to delete something on the page. Okay. So I want to target it, remember? But I can target it in a couple ways. I can do this, right? Hook into it. Or I can, kind of give up the need for me to have even a variable and start with document. So something like this, no variable required. Document, dot, and I want to target the button, okay? I think elements by tag name, or I could target it by the name because we know the button up here is, the name is About Us button. Let's target the same thing. So say, and by the way, we already have About Us button, so I could just delete it that way too. But let's target it as if we didn't have this, okay? Just for a second, just bear with me so we can learn, right? So I want to say, okay, get element by ID. And I want to target the button, About Us button. That's how we would do it. Again, no variable required. Dot remove. And press save. So that's a way of doing it. And this is called object chaining. Okay, we're going to do this a lot where we have the document and then here's what we're looking for. This is the query and this is our action. What do we want to do after we get the query? Which means we can do a lot of this in one. We don't have to do all these steps. We can say, okay, I want to go document, get element by tag name, main, square bracket 0, dot, and then we can, once we've got this, we can do that all the way down here, right? Main content, and we can append child, and we can do this first. So we can skip saving it inside of a variable. Now, the reason why we want to set it up in a variable a lot of times is because this is a call, and we're doing a query, right? So every single time we do document get element or document whatever, we're doing a query. Here, we only do it once. If we kept on doing this with the document, we'd call the document over and over again. And that's where it's more, I would say, computationally expensive to do it this way, if we're going to do it all the time. Okay? But I think this, for quick little things like this, is pretty cool. All right, so remove. So that's an example of deletion with no variable required. But we can also avoid all this because we have access to the About Us button. So this is a couple of examples. We can just do something like, here's example 2, where I can just say something like, hey, About Us button, and you can remove. We'll just do that too, right? So that does the same thing. But you notice that flash? It went boom, boom, right? Because if I load the page, it kind of shows the button for a second and then it's gone. We never want that to happen. I never want to show the button and the remove it because that means that there was a button there before, right? So smart users can probably go and look it up and see what happened. So this is not optimal, but I mean, at least we can remove elements when we need to. Okay, so remove is the way to go. So we know how to insert. We know how to create. Really, if you think about it, we can do full CRUD. Create, read, because we can read elements. We showed you. Update, I can update an element. And delete. Let's also show you about something called template strings. So one thing about, let me put this up on GitHub. So again, git commit -m, and we'll say added examples for insert after and deletion. Just so that way you guys have that coded inside of your GitHub. So if you ever want to refer to it for lab 1, you can totally know. That's the place to start anyway. But I want to talk about something else. This is not the only way we can do it. We can use something called template strings. So ECMAScript 6 and HTML5 combined, right? They created something called template strings, which are like, superstrings. And what I mean by superstrings is they allow you to inject and format the string in real time. So example, let's suppose I wanted to do this the old way. This is the main paragraph. I could break it down into 2 strings, right? I could have string 1. So I can say something like, first string, right? And that could be something like, this is, right? And I can have second string, which is like the main paragraph, right? I could do that. And then inside of text content, instead of doing it this way, I can just add them together, right? Like first string plus second string. And this is an example of something called concatenation, right? That you've seen before in other languages. C++ does this, C# allows this, and a bunch of other ones, right? And up until ECMAScript 6, which is the evolution of JavaScript, we're going to be talking about next week, so this is kind of a lead into that, as well as HTML5 combined, we couldn't do anything else other than this. Okay, it wasn't allowed. It wasn't even possible, right? But now we can do something different. We can do something that looks like this. I can say, what if I didn't want this at all? What if I wanted to change these, instead of like the second string being a quote, quotes, double, like a quotes, like instead of single quotes, it's double quotes. Let's make it backtick. So remember that backtick character? It's this, right? I want to change this to a backtick character. Backtick characters are the new template strings, my friends. And you gotta love them, and I'll talk about why. It's because I can do something that looks like this. And I can inject first string. And I can just go with second string. And now you might not think that this is anything grand, but I'll tell you it's pretty awesome for you to be able to do that, because that way I never have to do concatenation, and I can use something called interpolation, which is way better. And I can insert as many variables like this inside of a string as I want, which cuts down on concatenation, and it's much more, much cleaner and semantically correct, right? So awesome stuff. So first string and interpolation with something called template strings. Okay, now you might say this is cool, but watch this. So what if instead of append child main paragraph, let's comment that out, right? Let's go crazy now with template strings. Let's do something that looks like this. So I want to replace, actually, let's put that back in. What I want to do is I want to add a new thing after, just like I want to append something afterwards, right? Or I want to replace. But what I can do is I can have a template string that has a bunch of code, right? Because template strings are super powered, like I said, right? They're not just regular strings. So imagine if, first of all, I want to get reference to the document body, okay? So how do I get reference to the document body? Well, you might say something like, hey, let document body, as an example, equal to something like, hey, document, get element by tag name, and I want to go with the body tag, and I want the first one. Well, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because there is only one. There can never be only one body tag. It's like a singleton in some ways, right? So actually, HTML came up with a shortcut to all this, and they just go body, right? So document.body, and if I hover over document body, now you see that it's an HTML element again, right? So look, pretty cool. So document body is another way to hook into stuff. I want to get access to the document body. Cool. Now what I want to do is I want to change, so this is the insertion piece. I want to change the document body's inner HTML. Dangerous. Okay. So document body dot inner HTML. It's different than text content. Text content changes the text node. Inner HTML overwrites the inner HTML of anything that's inside the body tag. And I can just simply go like this. I can say, okay, cool. What if I wanted to do, and over 2 lines, which is also unique, right? I want to say something like, well, I really want a div tag with a class of container. This is for you, Zoe, right? And inside of my container, I want to add a paragraph tag or an H1 tag, right, with a class of, let's just use display1, display-1, and I want that thing to say hello world, right? And after my hello world tag, let's put a paragraph tag in there that says, and what do you think of this? Right, and let's give the paragraph tag a class, which will be equal to, margin top 5, because we want to make it different. And so we have a container class and all that kind of stuff. Let's see how that looks if I press save. Bam. Yeah. Thoughts, guys? Tyler says this class ramps up more than this. Oh, Tyler, this is
Surgery, I love it.
Tyler, this is level 1. Okay, if we're playing a video game, you guys are still on level 1. All right.
Like at least the whole like writing out like the divination thing, that reminds me of like last year semester's web dev where we used PHP to like right? Basically print our forms on the screen. So we would have a function that could do it. We could just fill up information. So like when you see div class container H1 and all that, like that just reminds me of what we did with PHP.
Yeah, like we had like a pretty complicated header that would basically surround the body, and instead of like writing it out each time, we would just have the PHP like include and then header.php.
We're getting there. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. The problem is that we can't do it the way you're thinking right now. And sorry, Kellen was asking, how did I autofill? It's probably an extension, Kellen. It's not intentional for me. It's probably something like React, if I'm not wrong. Let's just look up something. I'm pretty sure I probably have like React native tools or something like that. And because React uses something called JSX, and it uses this kind of template string logic that it probably kind of allows you to do that kind of stuff. And it's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure it's something to do with React, right? Because I didn't mean to. It's just something that's in there. And so React does a lot of that stuff. It has components. And one of the things we're going to try and target by the end of semester is React. I'd like to do React with you because it's supercharged JavaScript front-end framework. And I think it's like the most popular one out there right now. So I'd like to do that. But something like that would be really cool. All right. And again, I'm not sure which one it is. And it's not really that important. You can type it in. I know it's not optimal, but whatever. So this idea is beautiful and dangerous all at the same time. Right? And it's beautiful because I can inject whatever I want. And sometimes this might save us a whole pile of time. Why? I don't have to do this. I don't have to go, document create element div. Document set attribute class is equal to container. Document create element h1. Document create element. I don't do any of that stuff. This is a massive create. I can create all this in memory and inject it immediately. This can lead us down the path where I want to create components, right? And this stuff enables component creation as opposed to just in single element creation. Yes, Zoe, but not exactly. And injecting HTML files requires Ajax for now, right? But that's what I'm saying. It's going to come. So questions around template strings. They're very powerful and they're awesome, but they can be quite dangerous, especially when you do this inner HTML.
As I mentioned, you doing this though literally removed everything else that we put though inside robotic.
It did. It killed it, right? So what can we do with this better? Well, we could create an element. So here's something that you can do. This is reasonable now. This is unreasonable, what we did. The reasonable step, reasonable person would do something like this. So I want to target, and let's take this out. Notice that it killed everything, right? So let's just take this out for now, and we'll comment it out. So again, the comment out is control / okay, control / comment it out. If I comment that out, we're back to this, okay? And the reasonable thing to do would be to go to main, okay? And inside of main, give me another div tag to play with, all right? So create a div tag. I add the div tag after the paragraph tag, and then I do this. That's reasonable, okay? If I want to add in, I want to configure the inner HTML of the div tag. That's reasonable, right? One of those things. Or, these are elements that I'm creating here, right? And once I create elements and it's inner HTML, remember that these are elements that I can put in anywhere I want, right? But it really depends on what you do here. If you put this as text content, let me show you the difference. So if I said, instead of inner HTML, let's try something else. Let's try document body text content. Now, it's the exact same thing, but I'm using text content. So save, and it breaks. Right? The reason why this broke is because of what we're trying to do. Take a look at what the body has now. It's actually like a string. It removed everything inside of the body tag and it added it as a string. That's what I'm talking about. It can break. So that's the difference between inner HTML and text content. Text content is literally a text node. Remember that box in a box in a box thing, right? I know, Cameron, it's crazy, right? So that's text content compared to inner HTML. All right. So I wanted to show you this because it's out there, and I think it's good. It gives us a lot of control. But the right thing to do is add something like this somewhere else, right? So in other words, again, we would comment this out, and the right approach would be, let's use some of this. So instead of a div with a class of a container and blah, 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 I want to inject this piece, the H1 tag and a paragraph tag. That makes sense, right? So let's do it. So what I mean is main content, document body. This is nice. And I probably won't need the document body right now, but let's suppose I want to add in a paragraph tag as an example, this paragraph tag in this format, right? That's what I want to do. Well, I could configure it in a slightly different way. So let's do something like, so we got the document body. Let's make an article, all right? So again, in my main paragraph, I have my first string, my second string, and this is neat and all that stuff. But let's leave it the way it is so you can demonstrate this, template strings. And let's make an article. So I'll say something like, in my step 2, we'll make an article. Let article equal to document, dot create elements, article. And if I save, you can see that this is actually an HTML element now. Nice, nice, nice. And what I want to do with that is I also want an article paragraph. I could have that. So we can say something like the article paragraph. We can kind of include this, right? And I can say the article paragraph is here, and I can use backtick paragraph, and I want with an ID of article paragraph. This is more reasonable because I can do it in one. You see, I can configure and create in one, and we can give it a class of margin top 3, right, as an example. And in many ways, it's creation and configuration in one, right? So, and then I can put in the name, like this is the article paragraph, right? So that's kind of the configuration. That's what it looks like. It literally is a template string, right? Semicolon. Okay. And that's great, right? And we can take that article paragraph and we can inject it, right? So we can configure the article itself because we haven't done that yet. We just made an article. Let's do that next. So we can say, hey, article, let's set attribute. And we want to set the attribute to the class because we need to do this to container. So we want to put the container in there. That's nice. This makes sense. And, what I can do, right? My main content append child, we're not going to do this piece because that is unreasonable, right? But what we're going to do is, hey, article, let's change my inner HTML, right, of my article, and we'll just point to the article paragraph. Okay, that's something that we can do. And then we can just take the article and attach it to the document body dot append child, and we can add in the article. Done. That makes sense, right? So, and we can even cut it down. We can make it so that instead of article is this, we can just literally just go take this part right here and slap it in here, like put it inside the template string in there. No, variable required. Okay, so we don't need to. All we're doing is making a reference just to make it easier for you to see. Okay, so this is an example of template strings, and I want you guys to understand that because we're going to use them this semester. So again, git dot git commit -m. I'll set added, template string examples. Git push. Okay. And that is what I wanted to do today. Let's put this up on GitHub as a live site. as a live site. So now this is your in-class exercise 2 requirement, okay? We've done DOM manipulation. We've done a little bit of event handling and listing and all this stuff. We talked about the observer pattern today, this week. And what I want to do now is I want to use my operating system, and this is where the bad part is, right? I've updated everything. Please make sure that everything is saved, right? And I go into my operating system, and I don't need to copy everything, okay? So this is a strategy too. The only thing I've really modified that I know of is my index and my scripts folder. That's it. Everything else stayed static for this time around. So I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go to durhamprogrammer.github.io and paste it. It's going to ask me to replace files. I'm going to do so, only the files that have changed. And I'm going to drag and drop Durham Programmer into Visual Studio Code and push it to GitHub. I'll let this finish because I never let this finish and it keeps doing it. All right. Git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say updated ICE2. Git push. And now what you should see is it's going to go up on my live site, my deployment site, which is what we're calling it, right? And if I go to github.com/Durham Programmer, you're going to see that in my durhamprogrammer.github.io, then my pages are active. Do not be fooled by this because it hasn't updated yet. Let's refresh. You're going to see that it's pending, right? Wait for it. And then yours has swears. Cool. And then afterwards, refresh. It's active now. We can depend on it. We can go to environments. We can go to view deployment, and we're good to go. So that is your in-class exercise 2. Okay. Let's go through the report just to make sure you guys are clear on what I'm looking for this week. Okay. So again, and then we can go through some questions. Hopefully you'll have some, and I'm going to stop. We'll stop a little bit earlier than normal, so just to give you some questions for those people having problems doing all the stuff we did today, because there will be some. Okay, so excuse me. So the report is pretty much what we saw last time. The only difference is it says ICE2, name, first name, student ID, that kind of stuff. You can display the report when you're doing your little video. Sorry, Satya says, I'm unable to push initial commit to github.io. Can you help me after class? Yes, I can. You're going to add your folder to your private master repo from ICE1. Yes. Repo has been updated with multiple commits. Yes. Site structure. Your site structure includes one HTML page for each link, index, products, services, about, and contact. All pages are located in the root folder and include a similar navbar. Bootstrap navbar was added and includes appropriate font, awesome icons. Links are all functional. And then code functionality. Using JavaScript, you can insert and remove HTML elements and text content on your pages without causing errors to be thrown. Yes. And our live site. Your site has been deployed to a cloud host. GitHub Pages preferred. Image assets, CSS styles, and JavaScript behavior all function as expected. This is that no Jekyll file that we talked about. And your cloud host is connected to your GitHub repo to provide continuous integration, which it does on the deployment side. Whew. That's our lab report. Okay, any questions around this? Again, this is due tonight at midnight. You should be pretty good at getting it done because we've done most of it. I think so, yeah. And Tyler,
more than one bit.
Tyler, even if you have to take an extra minute, it's okay. You can have up to 5 minutes. I'll give you 5 minutes. Right? So it's okay.
About a minute or
it
so.
doesn't take long. But if you know what, everyone is different, and if you need more time, it's okay. A few minutes is okay. Right? So you can see your paragraph and article, but when I check the online one through GitHub, it won't show the additions. Just bear with it. Remember, Samuel, it's going to take time to upload. Right? Yeah. And the other thing I do, by the way, guys, is sometimes with the caching thing that drives me crazy, I'm sure it drives you crazy. right, is I use Google Canary as a secondary browser, right? So it's still Google, which means it's going to give me very similar looks and feels. So I recommend download Google Canary, right, as a development browser. I think it's pretty cool. It has some bleeding edge features that we can use, but the great thing about it, it's still Google, worst case scenario. The other way to do it is to use incognito mode. A lot of times that won't cache a thing, so it can work for you. All right, so sometimes that's good. Using a separate browser like Firefox is okay, but sometimes the Firefox browser is slightly different than Google and gives you different results, and you might get mad. And same thing with Microsoft Edge, is very different, and Safari is super different, right? So be careful, just try and use an extra browser. And so you can speed up, does it work? Because sometimes I'll do I'll upload a page for a client as an example, and then they're like, Tom, nothing's changed. And I'm like, give it a second, it's got to propagate, and your cache is going to clear, right? All right.
You know,
Yeah, tell me.
if you go gap in the nav file.
I'm so sorry.
Not for me, because I followed the video.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, you could fix it. Okay, fix it. Go ahead and change all of them. I don't care, right? But that you can. And going back to what Zoe was saying, poor design, right? Because we have to duplicate code duplication. It's bad. It violates a bunch of principles. Do not repeat yourself is the big one for me. And right where we sit with how we set up our structure, it's not possible to do anything different other than use Ajax, which we're going to get to. Once we get to Ajax, it's going to be much easier because there is no other simple way of doing it. There is none, right? At least nothing that's reasonable. You can do other things. You can use iframes, which are very bad design, and that's very bad, but Ajax is the way to go. And we're going to get there. Trust me. It's going to take time. And we're going to, kind of create our single page application, one page that has everything, similar to what we do with PHP and Node. Okay? We're going to get there. All right. Any questions before we stop for the day? I'm going to stop recording and take questions. And anyone who has problems, technical problems, I will address. Last time I took about 15 minutes with people with various technical issues, pushing to GitHub, their github.io page didn't work, different things. So I'm going to be spending the next little while doing that. So I'm going to stop recording now on YouTube and then address everyone else. Otherwise, guys, please remember next week, test. It's going to be released on Monday. It'll be due on Friday. And I will remind you when I see you on Wednesday. All right, that's it for me for YouTube. I'm not